Hello and welcome to the 4Corners podcast. I'm Brad and I am joined by Matt and Shad as always, and Craig Bott. Gentlemen, how are you doing tonight?
Good.
I'm all right.
Yeah, it's been a what, 4 days now?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I think I was I know I was alive when Reagan got shot, but I don't know how old I was. I was less than a year, I think. See, that was 81, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I when that happened, I was alive, but I think because it was early '80s. But I was so young, I would have had no knowledge of any of that. So
Yeah, I've talked I think we've talked on the show before, but the first I think world event that I have recollection of is the Challenger explosion.
Yeah.
that's probably the big one. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that one.
The Challenger explosion, then Baby Jessica down the well. I think were the two that I really.
I'm gonna steal a joke about her real quick. um, she got married and her husband and then moved into a new house. And the joke is, I'm pretty sure they're on city water now.
So we have I guess this week was a bit of a treat for me. So there's a couple of things we haven't really covered yet on the show. We've made our way around a lot of areas, but the AWA we've never really touched on. We've never really touched on Stampede much, and this one I feel has been kind of well, it's been a blind spot for me for a long time. So what we're doing tonight is we're gonna dip our toe for the first time into Portland wrestling, also known as Pacific Northwest wrestling. But that's always been a bit of a blind spot for me because Portland's a little difficult because a lot of other promotions you have like the TV, you have like lots of it and good, nice chunks. And Portland is you don't have that as much. Like Portland's very choppy. A lot of it we only have because Buddy Rose was taping himself on TV. So, and I would say Portland even wasn't accessible until the late aughts because I think people that are younger don't kind of remember there was like this the era we came up in, footage was hard to come by, and then like at the end of the aughts, like a lot really got out there, and suddenly there was kind of what I would call a footage revolution from like 2008 to 2012. So like all these guys you didn't know a lot about, like let's say the Destroyer, Buddy Rose, guys like that. That when we were coming up, you knew the name, but you didn't have like a lot of footage of them. And now there's a ton. Like even something on YouTube like the Chicago Film Archive, like suddenly there's uninterrupted complete matches, like dozens of like Luthez and Vern Gagne and guys like that. And so
Well, I think from that, didn't we see like a match or two from Don Leo Jonathan?
yeah,
I think
yeah.
that they have some of his stuff and I had not really seen. I still haven't seen really a lot of his stuff, but that's interesting because he's an interesting character too. But like that's an example. Like this is, I mean, how much footage of him actually exists that people, well, at least people that were aware of, and two, like how accessible was that until obviously more recently you're seeing some of that stuff.
There's more of him than you would think. Like there's surprisingly a decent amount of him. But I mean, we did a match with him um on the show, and he was like 45, and that dude was still like light on his feet and doing like, remember he did that, like I mean, he's a big dude. He's a really big dude, and they did this spot where like the Destroyer went to monkey flip him and he landed on his feet and just drop kicked him.
Mm-hmm.
So
Doing that damn flippy shit's what they were doing.
yeah, I was about to say people complained today they were killing the business, especially like
They're killing the business, yeah. They're
Yeah, I know.
yeah.
I do want to say one thing that was really nice about seeing this Buddy Rose footage is seeing Rose get to be operating in more of the prime of his career, because prior to this, the only thing about Buddy Rose that stood out in my mind was the stupid WWF joke about the Buddy Rose blowaway diet.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He was
And
never. He was like I don't even think he was a jobber like anything in the early '90s in WWF, and I think the highlight of his WWF career is he lost like a title match to Backlund at some point.
something like that. And it's like it's nice to see and be able to give proper credit to people who, frankly, are better than most of the wrestling audience gives them.
Yeah, because there were
You
things. There were things. This is like I've seen his AWA stuff, but I think this was like the most unfiltered like Buddy Rose I've seen. And the one takeaway I had like watching him bump, I'm like, dear God, like Kurt Hennig like totally took this from him for his heel work.
or it was inspired by,
Well,
because
I looked and they had a feud in like '83 when Kurt was still young, so I'm sure
okay.
Buddy had some impact on that. Because I asked Shad, and we can discuss it here, but you watch these matches, and I was like, so Shad, like when you were a worker, how would you feel if like someone was bumping for you like Buddy Rose was bumping for Piper in these matches?
Oh, dude, I would have felt like just an absolute beast. Go out there and you go out there and start throwing stuff like that, and guys are just pinballing off of it. Yeah, it's real easy to get caught in your own hype in that moment, 'cause you're just like, oh God! It feels, having someone who sells well for you feels so good, and that's part of the reason I'm such a stickler on someone being a good seller. It's part of the reason that I get grumpy with Osprey, who I will fully admit, first of all, the guy's a star. Second of all, the guy's an incredible athlete. Third, he gets people involved. Fourth, I like him outside the ring, like the interviews he did with Renee and stuff like. It's like, no, I genuinely like the dude. I really want him to succeed. It's just he pisses me off in the ring with his no selling stuff.
Yeah,
And then you see Buddy Rose just absolutely fly when Piper gives him a big haymaker, and you're like, oh, dude.
that's my
Oh, dude.
that's my problem with Osprey is like they've done some angles with him and like his promos and stuff are like, God, I wish I liked your matches because you're so getting me into this, and I know the match is not going to be my cup of tea.
And I fully admit it's a hang up of mine,
Hmm.
but it's part of ring work that is so important. That was the thing that, like, straight out of the gate, I was trying to make sure I did well early on, because you don't want to oversell and just die, but then you also don't want to, do the Shawn Michaels to Hulk Hogan thing. And so it's a sticking point for me, not just because of a style preference, but I guess more of a personal style preference. Like, selling is huge, and it it doesn't have to be a massive thing, but Piper hits the one thing and Rose goes somewhere, or you have somebody who just does a huge chop and the guy like curls up on his chest and hits his knees and like crawls to the ropes.
Hmm.
That's not saying you sell for 5 minutes off of one punch, but that selling does a whole lot. And then someone works Osprey's leg for 5-10 minutes, and then he's doing springboard stuff, and he goes for the Stormbreaker, and there's not a thought to it. That's why it's such a big deal to me.
I actually I feel that Osprey has gotten better.
No, he has.
Um,
He has.
I do think he has improved. I also think that he is overrated by people like Dave Meltzer, which any match rating he's going to give Osprey, it's like, I should shave off 1 to 2 stars because
Yeah.
that's probably what it really should be. That's how much you overrate him.
Wait,
Um,
Meltzer overrates Osprey?
I've made the
What?
joke. I've made the joke, and it's true. It's like, maybe Will Ospreay's mom or dad, but maybe they're the only two people who love him more than Dave Meltzer does, because
I will admit though.
he's Dave Meltzer's very special guy,
Yeah.
Yeah,
his main
yeah.
character.
He's,
But I mean,
He's-
I will say though, I am surprised in a good way. Like I thought he'd be a nice get for them, but I didn't think he'd be like a needle mover. And I'm kind of surprised that like he's the first guy I've seen from either company in a number of years. I'm not counting Cody in WWE because he kind of established that in AEW, but like the first guy like new to the scene, like new that has like really been a star. Like there's just like it's the first time in a long time I've seen someone come on TV and be a star. Like I think since Cody kind of figured it out, with AEW and was like, oh, okay, this is a big league like gimmick stuff, and like
I feel Osprey has surprised me, because given just working indies, and then working New Japan, which has a very structured, like the way it's more like tours than it is, weekly episodic television. Um, so it did surprise me, I feel, how quickly he acclimated to basically a weekly television format.
yeah, me
Like
too.
he can go out there and he can cut promos. Like they haven't really. AEW is a little bit lighter on, like storyline angles and stuff like that. That's more like, storyline versus the more some people. Oh, AEW doesn't tell stories. They tell stories.
Bullshit. They don't tell stories.
The stories are oftentimes, I'll say simplistic, because that's not really like accurate, because I think sometimes they can be quite complex and they can be long-term storylines, but they're more simplistic in that oftentimes the motivation is like, I'm better than you. No, I'm better than you. And then they fight.
Well, sometimes it's
It's
like
more like,
I'll use tonight as a great example. Like the stuff we watched with Piper and Buddy Rose. There's nothing super complex about it. It's just two guys that don't like each other.
they don't like each other.
Yeah, that's a perfectly good explanation. They don't like each other. Piper and him just snipe at each other. So this is really, I've seen stuff from Portland before. I've seen like scattered stuff here and there that I've talked about, but Portland was interesting because I've never seen anything quite like Portland. Because like stylistically, if you were to ask me what it is, I would kind of be like, it's kind of like a work rate territory with like, I wouldn't say blood and guts, but it's kind of like a very basically booked work rate territory that gets wild as hell sometimes and unruly.
it's a little evocative to me of like some of the, maybe like Mid-Atlantic or some of like the NWA territories. I think Pacific was like a
Yeah, it
NWA
was.
territory, but it's evocative like that. It seems kind of like that, but it has like its own like character to it. It is more of a work rate company. It doesn't, using blood and guts, like it's not blood and guts. I would feel necessarily that it's like you're going to see a lot of blood. It's not like a Memphis, or even like Jim Crockett Promotions at times. Like, but it did seem like a little like wild, kind of, without blurring it to actually go into like the ultra violence of like
I think
guys are going to be gushing.
I think we
Mike,
should use a podcast favorite here that Chad and I often go back to.
I'm getting ready to say it.
Oh, it's okay. Go for it then.
I was going to say, from what we watched here, the way I would describe the Portland territory is that it is a high-speed, high-intensity roughneck territory.
That's a great.
And because it's not, it's the word I'm looking. When you say work rate, swish, 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 air quotes. In my head, I'm thinking hold exchanges and reversals and stuff like that's part of my definition is fast paced technical moves, that sort of stuff. This was primarily, to me, it looked like this was primarily beating the dog shit out of each other at a fast pace.
Yeah, like I would say they do holds and stuff, but they like keep it going. It's kind of like just, I wouldn't say go 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 because there's psychology and they're doing stuff, but it's we're not gonna lay like a couple of dead fish in the middle of the ring for 5 minutes doing holds like you would see in this era. And I would say, because what we're watching is primarily, I think, from like 79 and 80. It's very very modern feeling in how they were working the matches, like very, very ahead of its time.
They stay, the thing that for Portland that I notice is they stay on each other. They don't stop and give. Okay, so just as a comparison, some places you might hit a big move and then you drop back to sell, and so there's this quiet beat in the middle. They don't do that. Piper goes in and he starts laying into Rose, and Rose goes down, and Piper might like march his way around the ring, but then he just gets right back on him. And so it seems to me that whenever this predominant style was when someone gets the upper hand, they press it continuously. They try and they keep trying to metaphorically move the ball down the field. And on one hand, it's good to stop and let them breathe sometimes, but then on the other hand, what they're doing is, I don't want to say simple. It's straightforward enough that it's not like you need a moment to catch your breath from seeing some big thing. It's, Piper wails on him, he takes a lap, he comes back to wail on him some more, and you've got a moment to catch your breath in there and appreciate it. But this crowd is so damn rowdy that they're loud the entire time. It's kind of like not Memphis, but some of those, of the Mid-Atlantic, where the crowd is just going ballistic the entire time. They're loud, they're yelling, that sort of stuff.
I would say it's a big bump territory too, because I saw some crazy bumps on these matches. So before we get into this, I picked some stuff out. So they mentioned a cage match and a hair versus hair match during this, and there's actually a lot of content of Buddy Rose doing stuff post hair match, but I could not find those two, and then the dates on these weren't so great, so these are kind of in an order, but I think I lucked into them being okay. But yeah, these aren't in any great order. I think they're about right based on some things, but even like two of them, like the first two matches, when I looked up on YouTube, like the two descriptions had them on the same date, and I'm like, these are not on the same date. But so let's start off with the first one. So this is Piper versus Buddy Rose for the Pacific Northwest Heavyweight Championship. Was there a gimmick on this, Shad?
It was
Lumberjack.
The first one in the watch was the Lumberjacks,
Yeah.
but this was not your standard Lumberjack stuff.
No, and
this was the Lumberjacks don't let you get a breather. You roll out and they just pitch you right back in.
I like that. I liked how they did the Lumberjack match. Like the Lumberjacks were not trying to steal any heat here, get themselves over. Like if you got tossed out, they just kind of pushed you back in. Rose was really trying to fight him away at one point, and they just kind of picked him up and dumped him back in. So, and there's a couple of names you'd recognize in there, like Adrian Adonis was in there. There was a couple other guys that I knew that were in there. I know Adrian Adonis was one of them. But so this is pretty heated, I think, a little match. Rose really bumps well. The Lumberjacks keep pushing them back in, but the Lumberjacks kind of play it pretty simple, so they don't like steal anything, and they work some holds. I want to say the one thing that stuck out is the version of the Pacific Northwest belt they had here was a walking atrocity the way it looked.
Oh my God!
I was like, is there even metal on that?
It was really like the strap. The strap behind the main faceplates wasn't particularly tall, but there was a lot of strap space above and below the central plate, which was like this long, kind of thinnish rectangle, and then it had two round plates next to it. And I look at it and I'm kind of like, oh, wow, that's a choice.
Yeah, it's weird because we see him later, so he has like a North American belt. I don't know what it was associated with, or a United States belt later. And I like that one. That one just had like a picture, the plate was like the United States of America. Like that wasn't my favorite, but I like that. But I like the tag titles they had in the last match we watched. Those are pretty nice looking.
Yeah. I don't know how the it's a phrase I'm looking for here. I don't know how the concept of belt design ended up getting as complicated. I don't know how you can get so far afield on belt design, I guess is what I'm looking for, because my guiding principle on belt design is going to be this thing needs to look important enough that people would want to fight over it. It needs to look like a big honking trophy in belt form. And, it needs to not look cheap in the process. So there are some of them that are, like, here, I'll go to this. There was the old, not old, but recent WWE tag titles that were just like the big brass penny tag belts. Those they looked cheap. They were big and round, and they looked cheap. It didn't look like there was prestige, I guess. The tag belts we saw here were probably the best example of my preference of belt design.
I feel like there was this sweet spot that we passed. Like there was this point in the mid 80s to like late 90s where belt design was really good, and then we've slowly descended into garbage since then.
Not to use, I'm going to say, not to, this is going to be a weird choice of words, but it's the best one I can come up with. My favorite unified design language for a set of belts was the late 90s WCW belts. They were all different and distinct from each other, but they also all carried kind of similar hallmarks that made them look good. It made them look important. It made them look like a big deal. And for an example that contrasts directly to those, that time period when they redesigned the Intercontinental belt, where it just kind of looked like a really big belt buckle and it was real thin and all that sort of stuff. Like, I hated that because it didn't look like a big deal. So, as you were saying, in watching this, those tag belts are the ones that get closer to the preference that I have for design language for title belts. Make them look expensive. Make them look important. Don't make them tacky, but, expensive, important, and something that someone would be proud to have, as opposed to something that's like, yeah, I'm the champion. Please don't pan down to where I'm actually holding the thing, right? I don't want my face in the same shot as this belt.
I mean, I like the concept that it should be like a prize. Like it should, I agree, like expensive. It should look like something that, because it is so, it doesn't have to be like a necessarily like the most ornate thing, but it's something that looks like an actual prize that you have won in some way, that you can then like hold it, throw it over your shoulder, wear it around your waist, like you're proud to have it. It's an accomplishment. But if it looks all trash, then it's like,
it's
whatever.
too small. That was my problem with the original AEW women's title, was it was so small.
Oh yeah. You're right.
Quite small, yeah.
It was very much a throwback design, but it just did not look big enough to look important.
Yeah.
So I'm 100% with you.
Or I hated the old WWE women's titles, and New Japan did this too, which I don't get why they did. Like butterfly looking belts, I hate those.
The current IWGP title, it's jokingly called the Divas belt. But...
Yeah, because I think like
those look uncomfortable. Like, I don't want pointy bits on my title belt that's either going to poke me in the bits or in the ribs. I don't want round those damn edges off. For God's sake.
It's just sad, because I thought that the IWGP title belt design that they retired essentially was much better.
It was iconic.
Like that was probably maybe my third favorite belt of all time. Like my first two, because of more nostalgic reasons, it's the big gold belt for one, and then probably like the classic WWF Winged Eagle belt. Like that, those are probably my top two.
Jason in the chat,
and IWGP was probably my third.
Jason in the chat brings up the AWA World Title, which I think is a good one, and then he mentioned the Bill Watts North American one, like the really big one, which I don't personally like. And the funny story I've always heard is guys hated that belt because I guess it weighed like a ton. I mean, it looks heavy.
I'm looking that one up because I've got to see if it's the one I think it is.
Yeah, you'll know it. But one thing I do like about the AEW World Title is they base that heavily off of the UFC title belts, and I think the UFC title belts are awesome.
I thought they based it a lot off of the IWGP title.
I think there's some of that, but I think it's always been evocative of like the UFC belts to me.
Okay. I mean, it could be both, and I just have a better picture in my head of the the IWGP than the UFC belts.
And like
But
I won't go too deep into it because I don't feel like dumping on WWE too much, but I like literally hate every belt they have right now.
it looks like they brought back the classic style on their tag belts, which good move. I like that. But here, give WWE some flowers for one that's not more than 20 years old. The undisputed title that Brock carried, I thought that was a good looking belt.
Which one?
The undisputed, the unified undisputed, the one that Lesnar had that
Oh yeah.
after he beat Triple H, I think, and so on and so forth.
Wow. I think the Winged Eagle is always going to be my WWE one, but I didn't hate the one like the Austin era, like the really big like round plate one. I didn't think that was a bad title belt either.
Do you mean like his personal one, the smoking
No,
skull
no,
one,
no.
or
The one that they switched to, like when he won the belt at 14, he had the Winged Eagle, and then they came out like the next night and gave him like the new belt. Like,
Yeah.
That one, I think the Intercontinental title, like the classic '80s look that I think they brought back for a while with Cody. That should always be the Intercontinental title. That is like a consummate like pro wrestling championship belt.
I don't.
the problem with
Go ahead, Matt.
the problem with the WWE titles, like I don't feel I care about any of them, and then they are trying to make you care just because, like, let's have a guy hold the title belt for like 2 years, and it's like it does nothing for me. Like, if I feel it's all very like soulless. Like, I mean, obviously we've talked a lot about Roman holding the belt hostage essentially for like 3-4 years, but they just had Gunther be the longest reigning IC champion, but it's like, yeah, like he kind of brought a little more prestige to the Intercontinental title, and also I don't care.
He didn't. I mean,
So
they forgot about the second he lost it. I think my problem with the WWE ones though is most of their belts are mostly concerned about getting that branding, and that you need to have your company's logo on there. Like you need to denote that, but that cannot be the focus of your belt. Like your focus of your belt, like ones I love are like the Half Dome belt, or ones that have like, the flags of like the different countries that are involved in, or like the IWGP title that had like the former champions on the side plates and stuff. Like if your world title should mostly have the world is like the focus of the belt. So, or like
let me
or like the WCW Big Gold, I think is like a perfect title belt because you have the world in there, you have like the crown. It's very big. Like I think the world title should be big.
Not to make a joke, but I consider that one to be the gold standard of title
gold
belts.
standard.
Yeah.
Let me throw this out there just for fun. Google the New South Pro Wrestling championship title belt. It's an indie belt. And the title belt is literally like this high.
Oh.
So guys wrap it around. It basically covers like from like their waistline up to like the mid chest. It is an absolutely absurd.
I'm trying to find it. It's good God.
Yeah,
it's either that the picture I found is a very small person holding it, or that belt is entirely too big.
Is Cabana Man Dan holding it? Because he's a smaller guy. He held the
I don't know.
But that's still one of my favorite story arcs in wrestling is like the return of Cabana Man Dan, like 5 years ago, and being a bigger star than ever.
He's interesting, because he like with COVID, I think he like got in like ridiculously good shape and like grew out his hair, got like facial hair or something.
Yeah, he started taking it seriously.
Like
I don't know if that's the word for it, but yeah, it's like he got in really great shape. He started taking it seriously, and everything. So the first match is pretty good. Like I said, it was pretty upbeat. It's pretty quick, but I had a lot of fun with it. So now we have to go to what I think is the highlight of the evening. So, I might have to use this line in the future, and Jason brought it up before even on the air. But so this is the infamous Buddy Rose is the kind of guy that goes to an orgy and complains about the cheese dip.
That's such a great line. Oh my
It's only from the mind of a guy like Piper. Like, what a line.
Well, this version of Piper is very different. Like, I actually really like this version of Piper because this Piper's he's very blue collar, but he's like got like there's a streak of like Archie Bunker in this version of Piper, even in like the way he like delivers his lines and stuff. And it was a very different look at him, and he's very, I don't know how to describe this. Like, he's subdued in his delivery, but like he is just saying some off the wall stuff.
The thing that I really love about the set of promos that we watched is that Piper does not. I attribute it to Jericho because he's the first one that I heard articulate it this way. Piper, whenever he's bagging on somebody in these interviews, is not tearing them down as an opponent. He's not saying, you're a fat piece of trash and I'm going to kill you. Because then if you do, it doesn't accomplish it. He comes up with the weirdest insults.
No, he's more
like...
He's more like...
So...
Yeah, he's more like, hey, Buddy Rose, this guy's like a sex pervert. Like, do you want to cheer for a sex pervert? Like, that's the kind of stuff he's doing.
Yeah. They're off-the-wall insults that, yes, attack the other person, but what they do is they make that other person out to be despicable as opposed to a bad wrestler. Well, so it's a great job at, I'm going to build heat with it, but I'm also not going to cut your nuts off to do it.
Well, and he's also doing something smart too, because he's giving the audience good ammo to use on them too.
Yeah,
and it's stuff that like Rose can play off of. So let's just go through the promos, then we'll focus on the matches. So there's this one. Okay, then we get the other one I really liked is when he comes out as Santa Claus and he has the kids, and then he's talking about. Like, kind of actually doing a bit of a community service thing is like, hey, it's Christmas. Like, let's take care of like, these poor kids that don't have anything. And then he pretty much just like, hey man, like I'm a crazy motherfucker, and like breaks a beer bottle on his head. Well, I like he brings these kids up and he's like, okay guys, you need to go away because it's about to get messy and I don't want you to get hurt before he like smashes the.
It's fascinating in that I've seen Piper do the break the beer bottle on his head in another place before, and it was messier than this one was, because the one that I saw, he did it and he stood there and cut a promo, but he still had glass in his forehead, so he's like bleeding all over doing it. But yeah, the fact that he's out there and he's like, no, I'm going to take my entire winner's purse and we're going to put it towards this kid right here so that we can do something to help him. It's like, oh, okay, cool. That's, not, I mean, it's a very face thing to do, but it's not something you hear much. And, God, Piper's promos were just so good at building heat without killing the other guy. I really, really like that.
I like how like the kid is probably like, Mommy, why does Santa smell like booze and cigarettes?
Santa works long hours, Timmy. He has to cope however he needs to cope.
Mommy, why does Santa smell like Dad's poker night?
Well, Santa has to blow off some steam. Go to bed.
Yeah. And then so Buddy Rose's promos were interesting. He's very, I'd say no frills.
Mm-hmm.
But he gets like the point across. He communicates well. But what I did not like is there was one, and I hated it because Ed Witkowski cut a promo, and I don't know what he was doing, but like he was doing this weird. He would accentuate words, like he would start and he'd like end the sentence on like a high note.
It is I alone. that is the best, or something like that. I'm just like, no, don't do that. Don't what? No.
And he doesn't cut like so if you don't if you're listening to this, so Ed Wachowski is kind of his partner. And you're saying, well, who the hell is Ed Wachowski? He eventually, like in the '80s, becomes Colonel De Beers. That's who he eventually becomes.
He found more fame as Colonel De Beers.
Yeah. So this gimmick's kind of like he's being the Polish prince, and so I don't know if he was trying to do some like, look at me, I'm a foreigner, like I have a weird accent, hate me. Like
I hated it, but not the way he would have wanted it to be.
No. So he was a low light of that. And then so the second Buddy Rose one, he and Piper are pretty much arguing about the cage match, I think, and Piper just like pretty much clocks him one, beats him up, and then there's another one. Piper's talking about how Rip Oliver jumped him, and that one's interesting because Piper's kind of like, hey man, they got the better of me and I need to do better because like I'm a 10-year veteran and I let these young pups like get one over on me.
Yeah.
And the other side thing I wanted to say too is we saw two of the main Portland announcers from the 70s and the 80s, and I quite liked both of their announcers because I read up on it and they use like sportscasters. So I like their announcers. I'm taking it the guy doing like when he was talking about like, it was in the last one he showed up a lot. I think it was Don Owens kind of doing like the commissioner-y gimmick thing. And he was really awkward and weird.
Yeah.
And then I like the ring announcer. The ring announcer always explained the gimmicks really well. And like the steps, like he did a good job. Sandy Barr, the referee, I had really mixed feelings on because like he was real awkward in the lumberjack match. Cause like he's like so the lumberjack match is like interference. I don't know if there was supposed to be, and he's like looking at it and like not doing anything and kind of looking away like he's not supposed to be doing it.
Yeah, I really hated that.
And I don't know what he was doing because then like eventually like let's say, how shall we say, if there was a 4Corners podcast Hall of Fame, he would be like the number one inductee. Killer Tim Brooks runs out and like interferes in the match. But like he was like it was really awkward, and I don't know what he was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And his outfits were god awful. Like in the tag, he looked like a I don't know, a candy cane. Even like the announcer, even the announcer was like ripping on him for it.
Yeah. It's strange because it's like Piper and Rose are forming this really solid nucleus of what's going on, and then everybody you add to it is not doing a great job.
Yeah. And I want to say I would also say with Sandy Barr, the one match I thought had the best referee was Lou Thez. He was doing it. I was like, oh, that's the first match. Because Lou Thez was actually a good referee, I thought. He did not do, was that Gene Knitsky I wanted to stab during the Harley race and Ric Flair cage match? Because like, no, don't use that cage in the ear. So this, oh, God.
It's like, that's what it's for, moron.
I know.
But Thez, in doing this, Thez was very good at stepping back out of the way, not getting in the way of everything. And also, I noticed that he would shift his focus between the pairs of guys back and forth so that, number one, he might be turning a blind eye to something he should have been, or he was tracking something he should have been. Like, but he wasn't overpowering or anything.
He wasn't trying to get himself over at all. He was doing the job of a referee, and he's like, I think he stuck to the gimmick really well. But let's go to that one next. We'll jump around a bit.
Well, let me add my thoughts. Like he agree. He didn't make it about himself. He was just a little awkward. Like, and sometimes where he pulls stuff, it's like you kind of like, come on, Sandy Bar, where it'd be like a guy's blatantly double teaming him, double teaming, and he's doing it like 3 inches behind him, and it's like, come on, like not only do you not see this, you don't even feel like a presence behind you, and he's like, he could have been a little more savvy about that, but
Yeah.
he was otherwise fine out of like those awkwardness.
It's like he was reffing with blinders on. He could only see what happened directly in front of him.
Like ridiculous blinders. There are people who like, you know, they shit talk some of the refs you see like in WWE or AEW, where it's like, come on, like strains credibility that you didn't see that or whatever. But this was worse than usual.
It was like the Slaughter Warrior match where I like had that total freak out that the referee, because remember his like legs were under the ropes at the end, and I'm like, the referee should have known he was in the ropes just based on like where he was standing in the ring. Like there should be ring awareness there. But that's kind of like what Matt's saying about the Sandy Bar thing, is like you literally can't tell. Like I would think, and Shad can correct me because he's here and he's been in the ring a bunch. I would say if I'm a referee, I should know if 2 guys are beating each other up behind me or if 3 guys are like scuffling behind me. Like, because I feel like, oh, well, that feels a little too heavy. Maybe I should see if there's some like shenanigans going on.
It's one of those things where it feels like context-induced stupidity, where it's like, no, this is the spot and it needs to happen. But, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. My favorite for doing that in the contemporary world is Bryce Remsburg, because what Bryce does is he'll notice when stuff's going on, but he's also like very intently focuses on, if there's something that he's not supposed to be noticing, he has moved away from wherever it's going to happen and is intently focused on something he has a reason to focus on. Well, he's like leaning outside the ring yelling at somebody about something, or he's in the other corner like trying to check on somebody, and so the stuff that's happening in the corner across the ring from him, it's like, well, you don't have as good a sense for it.
And Bryce is good at letting, so how do I want to say this? He's very good at letting himself get suckered by the heels without looking like an idiot.
Yeah. And then when he catches them, I love how Bryce acts when he catches them.
Yeah.
Because he'll turn and he'll be like, wait.
Yeah.
This isn't right. And you get to see, you can almost see his thought process happen. But it's very good body language. It's very good awareness. I think I'm not going to say the best, but Bryce is my favorite for doing that sort of stuff.
So before we get into this, if Jason, if you're still in the chat, I do have a question, since you seem to have watched the territory a lot. So, both of the tags we watched were 2 out of 3 falls. So, were tags typically 2 out of 3 falls in Portland, or was that just like the title matches? I'm just curious because they both were, so I wondered if that was like a thing there. So the first one we're gonna do is this is
Brian.
Yeah.
I haven't really seen much of any Pacific Northwest, but I like, how like when you watch stuff on YouTube, it recommends stuff to you, and there is like some other content on that, and I did see like some other tags recommended. One of them being like a Buddy Rose teaming up with the Sheep Herders, aka the Bushwhackers, against a few of the faces, and that seemed to be 2 out of 3 falls. So maybe that was like the gimmick. I don't know if it was every tag match, but I think it was something that recurred a lot.
Yeah.
But
and those versions of the Sheep Herders are not like the WWE ones, because I think that's Butch Miller and Jonathan Boyd, not and Luke Williams comes later.
Oh yeah.
So this first one, this is going to be, this is Buddy Rose and Rip Oliver versus Rowdy Roddy Piper, and he wasn't Mr. Electricity here. I don't remember what they called him.
Mr. Electricity.
Yeah, Steve Regal. And this is essentially
not the Lord Steven Regal we know of.
Yeah.
William Regal.
So this is essentially a tornado tag. I don't think they had like the idea to call it a tornado tag. So essentially, it's just bedlam. They don't have to tag or anything. This is just 4 guys like kicking the crap out of each other. And of the things we watched, I love this match. I thought this was excellent. I was like, oh, I bet Shad is going to love this.
The crowd was
Go ahead, Matt.
The crowd was really hot for it. It was a fun tag. I did. Let me add a little just observation between this and the other tag match. Piper had this weird thing of having just the oddest looking trunks possible. Both ones he had these like weird plaid type shorts. This one, at least, it was like kind of in the same color scheme as Mr. Electricity, Steve Regal, but
Yeah,
I don't know, it's odd. But I thought they were great as a tag team. Like, what were your thoughts on the match?
in watching this, okay, just general observation. Piper's tights seem to swing back and forth between wild plaid patterning or just solid colors with no in between, which is a little bit of mental whiplash. The thing that I like about this is, they're trading off their involvement, and when one team's getting over on the other, it's because they did something to make it happen, and they're staying after each other, but it's staying active, and nobody's being lazy. That's nice. I have in my brain there's a separation, and I know we've talked about it before, where the style of professional wrestling definitely shifted from like what we see here to closer to what we see modern wise, where you see more varied moves over the course of a match. I prefer seeing more varied moves over the course of a match, but this match is a really good example to me of. I can't remember. I think I sent it to you guys, but it was the observation I had of you get the old time vets. It's like back in the old days, we didn't have to do all these moves. We could just throw a punch and people would sell and all this, and we didn't have to do all this. So let's just work the arm tonight. It's like, well, okay. The thing is, yes, these guys are selling big off the punches, and you're not seeing a lot of stuff, a lot of quote unquote moves or anything like that. But it's not just like you go, and the guy's like, oh gosh, and he like Hurley shuffles around and he freaks out over it. It's like he takes the shot, stumbles, goes to the corner, and then stumbles back into it. Like it keeps in motion, it keeps going, and I really, really appreciated that this match, the momentum never really stopped. It kept going, and I like that.
So we talk about Matt's big reaction to this was like that. Um, so one of the falls is ended when Piper hits it. Well, he does it in two of the matches. Piper does the airplane spin and
Yeah,
pins. Was it Rippy pin?
I've never seen. Uh, did he beat Rip Oliver with it, or
It's hard to tell because like the video quality wasn't good, and Rip and
it wasn't
Buddy look.
great?
Rip and Buddy
Yeah,
kind of look the same. Um, but yeah, because
but I'd never seen a guy lose to an airplane spin. Like who sees people put anyone in an airplane spin like 40 years later? Like you don't see it really.
well, even
Oh,
the
you did it?
announcer.
I did. I'll send you a picture, Matt. But I did do I started out by doing the airplane spin, and then I did a move I haven't ever seen anybody else do. So I'm going to take credit for innovating a move. But I would do an airplane spin like we saw Piper do here in the fireman's carry. Spin, 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 and then I'd stop and plant my feet and do like Wade Barrett's Wasteland out of it.
Oh,
And
okay.
I called it a plane crash. But in this, seeing the Piper bust out the airplane spin was fun for me. I'm just like, that is such a it fit with Piper's gimmick. That just seemed like such a Piper thing to do. Is like, I'm gonna stand here and spin in circles until your head hurts too bad and you want to throw up and you quit.
I always liked
that frenetic motion.
I always liked he did it more when he became Slash, but when Wolfie D would do the whirly bird thing, he kind of do the razor's edge thing and like spin him around and then like drop him.
Oh
But
yeah.
But I also liked it's still my favorite, like Claudio putting him on his shoulders and putting his arms on his hip and spinning the guy.
Oh yeah, the UFO.
Yeah, that one always cracks me up, especially when he just does it like for eternity. But and Brian Danielson's done the airplane spin
Mhm.
off and on.
That's where I got the idea from, was seeing Danielson do it in a match, and I was like, I could steal that.
So I actually looked it up because Matt brought that up. So Elio DiPaolo in the 40s and 50s did it, but Jim Lundos did it. But Lundos was interesting. I'm probably butchering his name, but so he would like
Lundus.
He would pick them up like he was going to do a body slam, and then he kind of spin them around and then drop them and pin them. And I was like, oh, that's really different. And that actually, the visual of that like was interesting. But I don't know if they were calling what Elio did at the time as an airplane spin. I think they were calling it like a spinning fireman's carry or something. I might have seen it referred to as, but so those were the two guys I knew immediately that had done the airplane spin. I don't know. Well, and there's the very infamous one that I did watch because I think it's hilarious, but Gorilla Monsoon airplane spinning Muhammad Ali. Which is always a funny one.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of, the airplane spin is kind of like the meme of like wrestling, and it has been since like the 80s.
It's a fun move. It's recognizable. It's dynamic. It's fun to watch. I like that. I like seeing somebody using it. Even if you're like, well, what does that do to the guy doing it? It's like, well, to get into a weird video game terminal, you're casting from hit points. It'll do more damage to the guy you're doing it to, but it's taking something out of you.
Yeah. And they did something interesting during this match that I kind of liked and I wish people would do. So after the second fall, when they tied it up, like they did a promo segment before the third fall started. And I was kind of like, that's an interesting approach to that. And I kind of like it. Because why wouldn't, if you're going to give them a rest period, why don't you let two of the guys like hype up the next fall a bit?
It's not something that had ever occurred to me to do. And so it was I'm looking at it and I'm like, because for a minute there, I thought something else had been chopped into it.
Well, I thought maybe
initially I didn't realize what they were doing.
I was like, wait, did I miss something, or did they chop off the third fall and then they started wrestling again? I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. That surprised me. It wasn't, it took me a minute to put it back together, but
yeah, I had a lot of fun with this. I actually, both tags I really liked, but this one just was a fun, like, kind of brawl.
It was fun. It was brisk. Like, it was, I mean, it's like probably like a 20-minute match or so, like, but it didn't feel like it.
Well, the other tag
it moved pretty rapidly.
The other tag didn't feel long either, and that was a pretty long match.
That was probably like a 30-minute match, like, close to it. Like, it was on the longer side, but yeah, that moved actually pretty quick too. And that kind of goes to your point about how Pacific was kind of, or Portland. It was kind of it was kind of somewhat fast paced, or at least it was go. Like, there wasn't really like it wasn't like we're doing a 2 out of 3 falls 30-minute match, so let's do like a 5-minute rest hold in the middle of it. It's like you actually didn't see that. Like, there was some rest holds, like for the next one. Do we want to move into the next one?
Yeah, we'll do the next tag, and then we'll finish up with the final singles match. So this one is so I guess, so I'm trying to remember the angle. So the Bushwhackers left. No, the Sheepherders left. So the Pacific Northwest tag team titles are vacant. So this becomes a match for the Pacific Northwest title belts. So this is Buddy Rose and Ed Wachowski versus Rick Martel and Rowdy Roddy Piper. So that's kind of the setup. It's 2 out of 3 falls, obviously. And so I think the first thing I was interested in is, like, this might have been like the most I've ever enjoyed Rick Martel as like a worker.
Really?
Because he was just fiery. He was like fast paced. Like, I loved, and Shad probably popped for this. So there's a point in the match where Buddy Rose breaks the bottom rope by mistake.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And they're trying to fix it because you can tell like he's talking to the ring tech trying to figure it out. But I loved it because it was just there, so they used it in the match. So to win the second fall, he smacks Martel in the back with it. That lets Wachowski kind of put a bear hug on and then get a win on him. But Martel like grabs at that the rest of the match because you can tell he's feeling it.
His selling was good. He was a very like the classic fiery baby face where he had his comebacks were good. He was actually just really good in this. Like I actually initially I just had to look it up. Like because he seemed kind of he still seemed a little like greenish to me, not in his movements. Like he was actually very fluid and competent, but some of his like his spots where he get like riled up, whatever, it seemed kind of almost like a little not. Also, I'll use a little more like rookie-ish, but he seemed like he wasn't doing this that long. But I guess by the time this match rolled around, he'd probably been doing it like 6-7 years.
Yeah, because
he'd been in it a while. But
I think he had been a WWF tag team champion at this point one time.
Really?
Because I think he and Tony Gurria had won at one point.
Was this match from 80?
Yeah. Because I think he won it at some point in the 70s. I could look at that real quick.
Yeah, it might have been before that. Looking it up, he and Tony Gurria won the titles in November 1980. And I think this was before that. I don't think this.
I thought he had maybe had a run in like 78 or something where he won it.
I don't think so. I think this was before then, but he was entertaining. I guess arguably his biggest success probably came when he was in not counting the WWF, when he went to he was the AWA because he was like the world champion. And that he had a long reign. He had like an over a year long reign at AWA. AWA is interesting. We should probably do some of that because like once in the mid 80s, like once they got out of like the perpetual like Vern Gagne, Nick Bockwinkel reigns, like they actually did have like younger champions, and it was kind of interesting. You had like Rick Martel with the belt. You had Kurt Hennig with the belt. So
yeah, I think
it's kind of interesting. So
I think you weren't on the show when Chad and I talked about that. That I wanna get someone on the show. I need to ask some people that grew up in Minnesota, was like a fan of the AWA in like the 70s, and like is a true fan and like has a passion for the AWA. And I kind of want to get them on to talk about it because like the problem is like I do eventually want to do like the Bockwinkel and Henning like hour-long match and stuff, but it's hard because it's like the glory years really aren't out there, and you know by the time you get to the 80s it's kind of feels outdated and stuff. And I just want someone on, especially for the AWA, that's passionate about it so it gets a fair shot on the show.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, and we need to reteam ECW. Well, no, ECW, my cousin and I did the Heatwave one because I felt bad because we ran. So in the, like, I think the first, like, couple months of the show, we decided we were going to do an ECW pay-per-view. And we just picked one at random because the card looked interesting. And we had picked November to Remember, like, was it 98? It was 98 or 99. We picked literally, like, the worst pay-per-view they ever did. And it was brutal.
It had some nice high points to it, like, you know, Sid's debut there and stuff like that, but...
You're a goddamn coward, Tommy.
Yeah.
Goddamn coward, Tommy. Yeah.
It wasn't...
Hey, Chad.
Yep.
I had an AWA thought. If you recall, AWA had they gave a tag team title reign to Pat Tanaka and Paul Diamond.
Okay.
Who were the tag team Bad Company, who came out to the song "Bad Company" by the band Bad Company from the album Bad Company.
Do you know who their manager was?
That's
Matt?
Bad Company to the Fourth Power.
Yes.
Do you know who their manager was?
It was Diamond Dallas Page, right?
Yep.
Was it DDP?
Yep.
Yeah.
It was. So they played a lot of that, and I saw a lot of that because ESPN Classics used to play it a lot, and they did this angle. It was Wendy Richter, and I think it might have been Medusa, but the Bad Company guys like run in, And I'm like, oh, they're just gonna do something, to break it up or like mess with Wendy Richter, and like Pat Tanaka just hauls off and like clocks her right in the face, and like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
like we're going that route with it. I'm like, I did not expect that. So this is 2 out of 3 falls. So Buddy Rose is really good in this. I really like everyone. Ed Wiskowski is kind of blah. He just
I
kind of
thought he
did.
was fine.
Yeah, he was just.
He wasn't. I thought he was perfectly serviceable as like a tag worker. Like
Yeah,
he didn't like hold on fire, but I thought he was fine. I liked Piper in this, but I felt Rick Martel got a lot of the heat segments, and Piper was like the hot tag coming in cleaning house.
Well,
Yeah.
Piper played Peril in the first fall. Now, the one thing
Mhm.
I did like this, I don't know if you guys picked up on it. So, when you lost a fall, you had to make contact with your opponent. The 2 guys that were in that fall had to stay in, and the guy that lost could not tag out until he made contact with the opponent.
Yeah, which I thought was really interesting rules, but I actually liked it. It made it again. If obviously wrestling is not real, but if you're trying to suspend disbelief, these type of rules, while kind of like maybe odd, it kind of does contribute to whole like real sport feel.
Yeah,
I mean, I know that's
you lost, so you,
places like AEW. Place like AEW has said specifically they're trying to have like a real sports feel type of thing. So it adds a little bit to that, I think.
yeah, because you lost the fall, so you should be at a slight disadvantage.
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe you're tired from losing that fall, but now you have to restart again with your opponent, and you can't tag out, get the fresh man in until you've made contact. So
That's
it was
something.
interesting. I actually thought it was real cool.
That's something Mike Tenay always talked about in WCW when I watched it. I thought was interesting because he talked about like old submission moves, and he was like, this submission move, like they're using right now, like let's say like the spinning toe hold or something, and they're like, it's not doing much here, but like back in the day, like when you had to do 2 out of 3 falls, this hold was like devastating because you were just tearing someone's leg up, and then if you did that in the first fall, they potentially had to go 2 more falls with you on like a bum wheel. And I really liked like when Mike Tenay would go into stuff. Bobby Heenan was good at that too, and so was Gorilla Monsoon.
I really appreciated Tenay doing that because Tenay had a way of doing an exposition dump that did not feel like you were getting lectured at. Odd, given that he was the Professor Mike Tenay, but he had a really good way of handling that. So,
Yeah.
Explaining those idiosyncrasies is, I would say that I think I enjoyed Tenay doing it the most.
Yeah. I'll say just in general, in terms of like psychology and stuff, I always mark, and I love it when if a guy has a specific finishing maneuver that requires a certain body part or whatever. Like if my finishing mover is like I'm gonna lariat a guy, I love like during a match, like a guy will start just working over the lariat arm to like take that weapon out of your toolbox. Like I actually love like that stuff like that. I guess not enough guys that necessarily do that. It's kind of like old school at this point, but
Well, that's what
Well,
I liked.
I
That's what I liked when we watched Doink and Henning was like that second match where Henning's like attacking the leg that he's gonna hook for the perfect plex, and then but at the
Yeah.
same time Doink's trying to attack his arm so he can't do the perfect plex. They're both attacking each other based on one specific hold, because Doink's trying to take it away from him, but Henning's trying to also soften up Doink so he can do it. Like it was a very interesting like deployment of maneuvers.
Matt,
okay.
I was gonna say your take on the working the body part to take the move away thing. I like that, and it feels like that. I don't know, that particular style kind of fell by the wayside in the last 20 years because it for the mainstream stuff, it felt like there are a lot of people who had not even their 5 moves of doom, but their 10 or 12. And so they were going to do those, they're going to do their signature spots. And so that someone having that kind of adaptive style got more and more rare. I still really like it. And you still see it sometimes, but you see it out of people you'd expect to see. You see it out of like Danielson, or someone like that. I wish more people did that, because to me, that's the sign of someone who is a very thoughtful worker. I'm not gonna go out there and get my shit in. It's like we're gonna make sure we evolve this story. I like that, unless it has nothing to do with the story. Like a lot of these matches that Piper was in, that was nowhere near the story. The story was Piper's going to beat the hell out of you, and can you survive and hang on long enough for him to make a mistake that you can get out of? But
Yeah.
I do wish I saw more of those.
Yeah.
I think Stardom handles that interesting, because like the stuff we've watched from Stardom, like the Suri Utami match, I really liked how Suri kept going for the armbar, and they're just like, there was like a progression. Like each time she got the hold in, like it just got more and more hard. It got harder for Utami to get out, and she got more and more like desperate for it. And then there was the Azumi Starlight Kid match where she kept going. She kept going for something. I don't remember what it was, but she kept going back to that because that was the only thing that was working. So she kept doing like the same couple of moves over and over again. But in the context of the match, it's because that was working.
Yeah, yeah. I tried to do that. It pretty much needed to be in my heel face, but I tried to do that sort of thing. If I had a big strong guy, I'd attack his leg because I'm trying to get the ankle lock on him. Or, I'm going after the arm so he can't pick me up. So I was trying to go into arm bars and like triangle chokes and stuff like that. Sometimes I did well at it. Sometimes it didn't really work. But
you need the crowd to be paying attention sometimes.
Yeah, you do. It's one of those things where I think something that gets lost for some wrestlers is they forget that you have to play it big for everybody in the crowd to see it. You get so used to the idea of it being on television that you try and do it with like small little things, and then it dies with the crowd because the crowd's like, what the hell is he doing?
Well, remember, Matt brings this up because it is funny, but remember when Cody did that thing where he like dyed his hair black, and then he got upset because he was referencing like some obscure like 90s Superman story, and he was like, I can't believe people didn't get that. And we're like, yeah, because like
no one got that, Cody.
Yeah, well,
you're weird. It's weird that you think that people would understand this.
Like Matt Shad and I got it. Like Matt Shad and I got it because we're nerds and we've read all that crap. And even then it was like, oh, okay.
I went back and rewatched that clip, and there was a piece to it I had forgotten, in that whenever his music hits, and it has the American Nightmare logo that comes up, it was all red and bloody, like the Return of the Death of Superman emblem was. It comes out with it, and I'm like, okay, yeah. I see it, but you needed to be like more blatant with it. Just because if someone just didn't, the live crowd wouldn't have seen that. They saw it, we saw it on the TV, but you need to be at least one step more obvious than you think you do to make sure the whole crowd picks up on it. Yeah. It's the hell of live theater. Is that it has to be big enough that Grandma and Grandpa Yeehaw in the back catch it.
Which, or they have to have the context to understand what you're doing. Like, remember in like 2002 and in 2003 when Taker was getting super into like doing MMA stuff, and like he was doing like a triangle choke as like a finisher, and it didn't get over because people,
Go-Go Plata.
And people were just like, why is he humping that guy's face, and why did he submit? Because no one had like, MMA wasn't popular. Like if you did it now, people like are just like, oh, okay, it's a triangle choke, and they might not get it because it's like, well, that's dumb, I don't care. But then it was just like, well, why is he humping that guy in the face? Like I don't get it, because no one knew what like a triangle choke was.
I mean, they also were trying. I mean, by that point, Taker had kind of, I guess, gone through a few like character iterations, but it is also like, dude, you've been presented for like 10 years as like an undead zombie, like a revenant zombie, like, attacking people. You've been raised from the dead at some points. Like I literally, like, they had a casket match with a fake Samoan who buried you alive in a casket, and then you rose up, and it's like, come on, like you shoot lightning, and then you're now of a sudden it's like, oh no, I'm serious, I'm doing like MMA moves. It's like,
No,
it's mood whiplash.
You got it. You got it.
Like,
you got
it's
it backwards. He was a fake Japanese man that was a Samoan, not a fake Samoan.
Oh, I see. Oh, I'm sorry, I had it. I misspoke. He was a real life.
My
he was
favorite.
a shoot.
Well, I hated
Kayfabe,
I hated the time, but remember Jim Ross was obsessed with calling him Booger Red in that era, and they had to tell him to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that, first of all, that particular hold is my brother's favorite because he thinks the name is goofy as hell. I know Gogoplata there's a background to it, but the name by itself is goofy. Second, honest to God, I think that was about the worst choice he could have made if he wanted to use an MMA hold as a submission.
Yeah, because
it's too complicated.
And the other thing is, like, if you know MMA, I think literally even now, it's finished like single-digit matches because it's so hard to do. Like, it's only been pulled off like single-digit times successfully to end.
It's too complicated because you have to hook the guy up enough. You have to blade his throat with one of your shins. You put your other foot around behind his head and then reach up and grab that foot for leverage. It's like that is frankly too long-winded to be a good wrestling submission. Ric Flair had a quote once that said, "You may have the greatest hold in the world, but if it takes all day to put it on, people are going to get bored by the time you get there." And so
that's what I hated about aughts indie wrestling, is where guys would have these uber complicated moves, and it's like I'll use a great example of what I hate, but like the lethal injection. I hate that one because there's one time he did it to Orange Cassidy and it was perfect because Orange Cassidy like stood up right into it. And it looked awesome when he did that. But usually guys are just standing there for like 5 minutes while he's doing this flip, and it's just like drop down and he's gonna miss.
Yeah,
look, I don't have like the animosity that some guys like Kevin Nash, whatever, does have for flippy stuff, whatever. But that's like me and basically anything that Blake Christian does as a wrestler. It's like,
shots fired.
Why did you need to do like 10 moves to hit the guy with one move that you could have just done the one move? It's like, I'm gonna do like 10 flips and this elaborate sequence, then to just like give you a drop kick to the face. It's like, just drop kick him in the face, dummy. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like,
why are you gonna burn so much energy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I don't say this about a lot of people, but for him, it is like, this is masturbatory. It's like, this didn't need to be the case. You're actually, but a lot of people don't like him online. Like, I found like a lot of people are like, enough, it's nonsense.
What was that one we watched? I think Justin sent it, and I was enraged by it. But that guy like did all those flips, and he really did nothing afterwards. And I'm like, why did he need to do that? It was like a GCW show around Mania weekend, I think. Remember, he just did like all that stuff, and people were like, that's so cool. And I'm like, what's the point?
No. That's what pissed me off about Jack Evans' matches, is it felt like that was the entire damn match.
Because I don't think people understand, like, just having the bit of martial arts I've done or anything. Like, I don't think people understand that, like, if you can get away with it in, like, a sparring situation or something, that if you have, like, a weight advantage on someone, like, hugging them and leaning on them a bit is, like, an actual legitimate strategy because you're going to wear them down, like, quicker.
My one of my old roommates, his dad was a competition judoka, but his dad was not a small, like, his dad was like a barrel-chested dude, but as he got older, he put on a little bit more weight, and so he's a big dude, he's a big hairy dude, and what he'd do is he'd loosen his gi up because, it gives him a little more wiggle room. He had a move that basically became he called the walrus. That if he got into a position and this guy was scrappy, or if he wanted to wear you out, he'd get into a top position, and then he'd take his hairy chest and mash it into your face and just kind of flatten out. So your face has this big hairy dude's chest right here, and it empties your gas tank real quick, and some people just tapped out after getting hit with the walrus. You don't have to be too I understand you want to do something cool, but if you make it too complicated, then you're gonna ruin your suspension of disbelief.
Yeah,
that's my problem.
There's a lot of guys that have that problem. I hate like the uber complicated, like, you see the NXT women do that a lot, where they like do this, oh, I'm going to flip, I'm going to go up on the top rope, and then I'm just going to do this other flip, and all I did was an arm drag. It's like,
yeah, I really hate
that. You just used up like 15% of your gas tank to do 2% of damage to another person.
Ray Phoenix does that sometimes, and I don't love it. Matt, you were going to say something. I'm sorry, we kind of bulldozed over you.
I don't recall, actually.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I'm fine with... I was going to say, I'm fine with like what Ray Phoenix does sometimes, because Ray does do that, but sometimes Ray Phoenix like, yeah, I'm doing this because I'm just being a dick right now, and I'm showing you up.
I will say this. I will say, well, I actually do recall what I was going to say, but to go to the Ray Phoenix thing, this is from like a couple years back, and again, we talked about Will Ospreay, and I do think Will Ospreay improved, but there was a match from like a year or two ago, and I remember someone on Twitter said this, and I thought it was hilarious, and I kind of agreed with them. But it was Ospreay versus Ray Phoenix, and I don't recall like what Dynamite it was from. But this person on Twitter said like the first time they do like a 20 move sequence and don't make contact with each other once, I'm turning this off. And that happened literally within like 2 minutes of the match starting.
You're being generous. I just saying 2 minutes.
He just like tweeted, it's like, good night, everyone. It's like, I get it. Like sometimes it is like just ridiculous. So it's like, let's do all these, like this sequence of moves where we almost touch each other, but don't. And then they have like the stare, the pose down against each other, and everyone claps. It's like, it's almost become like a trope. And I get it. It's like, it's impressive that you're able to do these. It's impressive you're able to do these like, acrobatic gymnastics moves, but I also feel it's like,
it's done to death.
Okay, this is a little much.
Yeah.
The thing I was going to say is this like multi-sequence stuff, if someone's going to do like the Blake Christian, like whatever, GCW, I'm going to do like 20 moves. I feel it's only really worth it, in my opinion, if you're doing it, and this is really like a one-time thing, but you do all that sequence, and then ironically at the end of it, you just like stop, and then do just a simple like, I'm gonna like kick you, like a little just like just like kick you, like a mild kick or something, where it's like everyone is just like,
I was gonna say
something where like everyone is ironically be like, like screw you, like that, all that for that, and it's like all that for that.
I was gonna say,
and then you do the cartwheel, and then you spring off the ropes, and then you stop and just and slap him in the face.
I mean, it should not have like pinned guys, but that's why like initially the people's elbow, it's kind of like it was funny because it's like I do this big move, I'm gonna jump over you again, and then just do a simple elbow drop. It's like that shouldn't pin a guy. It should pin them after if you're gonna do like the rock bottom. You've done your finisher, and then you quickly do.
The problem is he's being a dick when he was doing that, and it lost like its luster as he made face changes and stuff. I was gonna say I'd totally be willing to do that like 20 sequence thing with someone, and then just at the end just like poke them in the eyes.
Yeah. You go through all that, stop, and just slap him in the face. It's like, okay, that's flexing on the guy, and I appreciate that, but
there's a funny one Chuck Taylor used to do where he'd like do a handstand and he'd just flop on the guy like just like an awkward like dead fish, and I always thought that was funny. So they did. I kind of want to see if the follow up to the tag is online though, because they did something interesting where like the last the last fall, they just start brawling on the outside. It gets totally out of hand, and they throw the match out. Um, and the guy doing the commissioner guy, I'm gonna assume that's Don Owens. I don't know. We'll just assume it's Don Owens though. So he's like pissed, which I thought was interesting. He's like pissed. He's like, I set this up to get title belts and stuff. And somehow, like, I also liked how Rick Martel grabbed one of the belts and Ed Wachowski grabbed one of the belts. So they're both like, I have one of the belts. Like, what are you going to do about it? And so it was an interesting solution. I actually agree with what he did. He's like, well, okay, so you both have a belt. So, okay, Ed and Rick, you're going to wrestle each other next week, and whoever wins gets both belts. And I kind of want to see if that match is out there. But I thought that was it wasn't like an original angle, but I liked the execution of it. Like they took a real interesting spin with it. It was a logical way to handle, hey, both guys grabbed the belt and we don't have champions, so like let's just make them wrestle each other. I don't know. I think some people might be pissed off at having a singles match to crown tag champs, but I was kind of interested in the follow up.
On one hand, sure, I get it, but there are storyline ways to make it a good choice. You remember Sting and the Giant being the tag champs, and then the Giant turned heel and joined the NWO, but they're still a tag champs, and it's like, yeah, but I don't want to tag with you anymore. So they had the match to see who was going to be the tag team champion, and then he could pick his partner. It's like, okay, cool. That I get that.
Yeah, but see, the problem with when they did it in WCW is because that was Eric Bischoff, super genius, trademark Acme Products idea to kill the tag titles, because for some reason that was a great idea in that era, because that leads into Judy Bagwell eventually getting a tag title.
I don't understand that, because the story with everybody taking a shot at the outsiders and them getting screwed out of beating them over and over again was hot.
Well,
like people were clamoring for these things.
And I thought it was dumb, because in that era, when things were so competitive between the two companies, like two of your biggest advantages in WCW were the cruiserweights and the tag team division. Because WWE, even in that era, like that's never been like a huge focus in the WWE. So if you're like me who loves tag wrestling, WCW was a better option because they had a crap load of tag teams, and then they essentially killed that. And so why am I going to watch WCW if you just took like one of the two things away that like you have over the WWE? Because like your booking's definitely not better.
I appreciated that towards the end they corrected on that real well, and even made the cruiserweight tag belts, because it was like those matches were fun as hell to watch.
I always loved Tank Abbott being like an uber fan of 3 Count.
Oh yeah, boy band fan.
Yeah.
Tank Abbott.
Yeah.
That's the best thing they did with Tank Abbott.
But I really thought it was a good angle. I like the setting that they're in, because I think Don Owens owned this building. But like the building they do these Portland TVs out of, there was something like, there's something very pro wrestling about like the way that building is.
It seemed to amplify the crowd sound and make it seem bigger and louder, which makes the atmosphere bigger. It comes across bigger on TV. That was my takeaway for it.
Yeah. So then our final match of the night. So this is Piper and Buddy Rose. I don't know. There wasn't, I don't think, any special steps on this one. This was just the longer match between the two of them, I think.
I don't think there were any special steps, but this one was chronologically like a later match, right? Because
I think so.
I think this was from 80.
Well, Piper didn't have the weird plaid shorts in this one, I don't think.
No, but the thing that I don't know what necessarily happened.
And I wanted to say, this was the only one that was not in the building. This seemed like an arena setup.
Oh no, it seemed like a bigger venue.
Yeah.
Let me look it up. Let me look up his professional wrestling career really quickly. I I don't know exactly. Maybe by then, early 80s. Okay, so early 80s, Piper had gone to Mid-Atlantic where he beat Jack Briscoe for the Mid-Atlantic title.
Yeah, we saw,
Also
and
defeated Ric Flair for the U.S. belt.
we watched the one match with
Got,
him and Briscoe. That's another Four Corners, like I would say pillar match is him and Jack Briscoe for the Mid Atlantic title. He had those weird plaid tights for
yeah,
that too that you were talking about.
yeah. This, I have to see like where this match aligned, but I almost feel like this probably, if I had to guess, occurred after at least like him beating Jack Briscoe and him actually doing some Mid-Atlantic stuff. Because the thing I noted, one, bigger building, but when he came in, he had like a rock star, like essentially like reaction from the fan. Like the people like were hot for Piper, and he seemed like a bigger star than any of the 3 matches we already saw.
He
Like
had the
much bigger star. Like he had made it.
he had the more modern hot rod, like the Panther on the front shirt too. Like he had a more modern shirt
which
I recognized.
I actually have that shirt. Like you can buy that shirt online from different places, and I have that one. Like just the Panther. I don't
Yeah.
know why. I don't know what that specific logo or design was meant to be, but I have that shirt. It's
Yeah.
for people who are like, it's one of those. It doesn't quite fall within the classic wrestling shirts of does this mean I belong to a cult or am I just into really dark heavy metal,
Yeah.
or a part of a gang, cult or gang. But it's one of those shirts that's like just it's cool design, like a panther or something on it. But for people who are in the know, like would get the shirt, like they'd be like,
Yeah.
wow, that's
Well,
a deep cut.
I don't think I think when that one I think if I had to guess based on the era, that was probably pretty sophisticated for the time. Because I think like Hulkamania stuff was fairly sophisticated for its era too. Because I don't even think like they sold. I know Greg had it, but I don't even think they ever tried to sell like the "I broke Wahoo's leg" shirt or anything.
I think that
Which
one
I
was
also
just
have that.
like a straight up like
also,
iron on letter stuff.
Yeah,
I also have that shirt. I Rick Wahoo's leg.
yeah, and
I also because like I have like I have 2 other shirts on. I'm going on a tangent, but I like some of these retro shirts that you really have to kind of like be in the know to get. I also have a shirt that says the Great Heart Puncher, which is an Ox Baker shirt. And I also have a Dusty Sucks Eggs shirt, which is of course like something that Terry Funk did.
that's one of my favorite clips ever. If you've ever seen it, is Ox Baker on The Price is Right,
Mm.
and they're like, "Come on
I've
down,"
seen stills.
and it's like you can find the whole clip, and you know this, and they put him next to like the shortest woman ever. So it's these little old ladies, and you just have Ox Baker up there, like big ass Ox Baker, and he does okay on the show, but it's funny, and Bob Barker's kind of like, ooh. 'Cause, you know,
Big fella.
if you've never seen Ox Baker, famously he's in Escape from New York. But you know he looks like a maniac. He's got like the big
Yeah.
crazy hair and stuff. He's not a great wrestler, but I really love Ox because Ox is like kind of like a throwback to like a bygone era of like guys really committing to the gimmick, brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
We might have to review the Price is Right clip on here at some point. Let's see. So this one I noted Piper takes like a big dive over the top rope to the outside, which is like, oh, I don't think I've ever seen Piper take like that big of a.
In the course of this, I saw both Rose and Piper take big spills over the top. And I have to admit that it stood out because they didn't do a whole lot of that sort of like real big sort of thing. Like they kept it to 1 or 2 a match. And so it stood out more whenever that happened. And I mean, they didn't just like go over the top and hit the apron and go to the like they heckin' flipped over that and went to the floor with like, you know, bacon and cheese on the way down kind of stuff.
Yeah, because we haven't talked a ton about his in ring, but Buddy Rose, my impression of him is like Buddy Rose is in that like Terry Gordy, like Sean Waltman, Dustin Rhodes category of that guy looks like he just stepped into a ring and like was instantly like good at it. Cause he's just so like it's hard to describe like Buddy Rose, but like you see like a couple of guys and like I said, like not like a ton. Like even like I would say Flair and Brett don't even have that necessarily, but they're just guys that like the way they move, the way they like interact with the ring and stuff. It just seems like they were born to do it and like they just have like a natural disposition. And I would say like Terry Gordy's that kind of way. Buddy Rose is that way. Lawler's that way. Savage to a degree. Waltman, Dustin, like he's just so natural at it. Like there's just some seamless like quality to him, and he's kind of like this pudgy, dumpy guy, which even makes it more perplexing. Because he does stuff, and you're just like, I don't know, like, should that guy be able to move like that?
Kind of like surprising at how agile like John Tenta is or something.
Oh, we forgot to mention in the tag. I wanted to say so he had lost a hair match, and he was wearing this god awful mask to cover up the fact that he like didn't have his hair during that match.
He was wearing this like weird, he was wearing this weird like mask, and it's almost like it wasn't quite, but because it was like white, but it was like one of those weird masks that almost like not like pantyhose, but like this like spandex mask.
It was
that
like
people wear when like they've been horribly burned. It was like it was something weird.
Like, it was like
I didn't quite get the context. Why is he wearing a mask?
It was like what the Elephant Man wears. In the movie, but there's like a whole thing with that. I found a bunch of clips because it was recommending me stuff. There's like a whole thing with him like wearing a wig and doing the typical heel lost his hair like funny stuff that's usually entertaining, which I was kind of interested in. I really wanted to find the hair match, and I don't know if it's on tape somewhere. If I can ever find it, we'll watch it, because they were talking about a cage match too. And I would say too, the other thing I noticed with all these matches is Piper and Rose have really good chemistry together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they feed into each other really well.
It made me actually want to watch more Buddy Rose. One thing I took away from this, and maybe this is like the W for when he was there, like the WWF bias, that I always thought like he was a smaller guy outside of the fact that he was like, heavy set and overweight. But he actually, what these matches showed is like he actually has some size to him. Looking it up, he's like, at least, Google says he was 6'1", which is like taller side guy, like, and obviously was like in the high like 200s. But he had some size to him. Like he wasn't. Did he have like the rock hard physique? No. But he was like a perfectly good sized wrestler. Was bigger than probably a lot of guys, not just like overweight, but like physically.
Because that's the
but
thing.
in WWF land, where everyone was like 6'4", 6'5", like 280, he looked like a smaller guy.
Because you don't even appreciate that, like, because of the bias you're talking about. You don't even appreciate like Bobby Heenan's a big guy. Like you don't realize that with all this stuff, but Bobby Heenan's like 6'2" or something, or was. Like he's a bigger guy than he gets credit for.
Yeah, well, and there's also the aspect of gimmicked heights and that sort of stuff, because I'm pretty sure, can't swear to it, I'm pretty sure that like Brock Lesnar is about 6'3", 6'4", and whenever Lesnar was doing his show, stare down with a bunch of the guys, he was taller than Piper. But again, we might be talking like kayfabe heights and that sort of stuff.
But it's a funny side story my cousin and I told. So my uncle, did like limo driving services. So his back appears on a Raw, like with the Radicals when they first come in. So my uncle was like 6'3" or 6'4". He's a big guy. So, it's the Radicals. So you see his back, and Voldemort actually like stares him down a bit, but has to look up to him. So, he's standing there, and then all the Radicals are like walking by him, and then there's my big ape of an uncle just like towering over all of them. Like I said, like Voldemort has to stare him down, but has to like look directly up to him because he was only like 5'8" or 5'9" or something. But I know like people always mention Cole because Cole is like build at like 5'11" or something. Like he's not 5'11". Like I have been to shows. He's shorter than I am, and I'm not 5'11". I'm like 5'9".
I try to. I don't want to body shame Cole, but I mentioned before, like he just seems he seems on the smaller side and doesn't really have the physique that I feel he should for a guy who's arguably is a top guy or is kind of in that realm in AEW.
Well, but it works for the slimy heel thing because you just kind of hate him even more for it. Now, as a face, no, I'm not a fan of that. But as a slimy heel, that fat ass Adam Cole, that's
my problem like where he didn't work for a long time for me that they kind of finally figured out in AEW is like they always tried to make him a cool heel even into like Undisputed Era, and I hated it because I'm like Adam Cole's a dork. Like, and they finally kind of got that right in AEW with him. Instead of trying to make him cool with like the Bullet Club and stuff, they kind of made him a dork and like a sleazeball, which I think is like what he's good at versus being cool. So I connected with him a little better in AEW than I did elsewhere. But like he's not. I mean, he's also one of those not necessarily my cup of tea. Like I will readily admit that he's very good, but he's just not like my thing.
If he were to change certain things he did in the ring, I would be far happier. But as a slimy little heel, I'm great with that. Just and I understand that if on other platforms or if he's on Twitch or something, like he's a super nice guy, he's super kind, all that sort. That's great, but that doesn't translate well into a wrestling gimmick. So
yeah,
just have him be that slimy little douche nozzle that everybody hates.
Yeah. But I have to say, like, I had seen Buddy Rose because I had seen some of his, like, when he and Doug Summers were the AWA tag champs. So I had seen stuff with him before. Oh, that wasn't him that did that promo. So there's a funny promo in AWA because they had noted, like, lover of cocaine Larry Nelson was there. He has a book, like, if you've ever, like, watched the Lapsed Fan episodes, like, he was just an animal, like, just drugged out of his mind for, like, months at a time. But there's a promo, like, Larry Zbyszko's doing, and he's talking about how money doesn't mean anything to him, and he, like, tears up this, like, $100 bill or something, and he throws it on the ground, and they're doing this interview, and you just watch Larry, and he's, like, looking at it, and you just see him, like, take his foot over and step on it and slowly, like, drag the money back under him while they're doing this interview, and I'm like, that's hilarious. Cause you just see like he's thinking about it. It's really funny. But yeah, like Buddy's like what I think I like about Buddy is like, so to kind of get his gimmick down, which he leaned into the Playboy thing much. Like I thought they called him Playboy Buddy Rose. I'm like, oh, he's just doing like a ladies man thing. But no, like one of the matches he has the big Playboy logo on, which he gets sued
on his cape.
He would get sued into oblivion if he did that today. And then for this match, he came out with like Playboy bunnies. So he played into that much more. But like when he had the Playboy logo, I'm like, oh man, like they would, like
they'd get after that pretty fast.
Yeah. So but he's kind of dumpy, so that adds to it. Like he kind of has like a crappy haircut, but he's very. And this is not in a bad way. I think it actually works for him. He's like no frills. Like everything about him's good. Like, but his promos are very to the point, like not a lot of yelling and stuff. Like I love guys in this era if they don't yell. Like guys that talk quiet are always big pluses to me. His ring style again, very good. Everything's solid, great seller, but I would say no frills.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and it works for him playing the heel that he was playing. So, kudos for somebody knowing what their strength is and leaning into that.
So what did you guys think of, like, so being your first exposure to Portland, like, as an area, what did you overall think of, like, the company, the style, the presentation? I think we kind of hinted that, like, the tornado tag is probably, like, that, from what I saw, like, that area distilled down into, like, a singular match, like what the style would be.
Of all of the... Oh, go ahead, Matt. You go first.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I walked away with a very favorable impression of it. I would watch more of it. I found it a little compelling. It wasn't. I guess I don't know what I expected, but so having no expectations, I was pleasantly surprised. I did appreciate that it was a little bit of a work rate promotion, as we've said. But also I liked that it was brisk. I mean, I can't imagine every single match was like the same brisk style. Nothing dead, but it did seem like very positive to me. So I would definitely like watch more of it to see like what they do. It was interesting. Like you mentioned Doit the Clown. I think I had to step out for the lumberjack match you guys were talking about. But I think Matt Bourne was like one of the lumberjacks. Like, so they actually had like, a lot of.
He was holding the blanket for Piper when he broke the beer bottle on his head, because I popped huge because one of my absolute favorites, Iceman King Parsons, was the other guy holding it up.
Iceman King Parsons, that brings you back.
Which one of my favorite, he has one of my favorite promos ever that I post in our chat sometimes when I want to laugh. It's like when he wins the world class world champion. He's like, that's right, like a black man is the world champion.
Yeah, they had a lot of talent, like a lot of like interesting talent for the time. So I would definitely watch more of it.
Yeah, their talent situation's interesting. So if you read the results, they run like a very tiny crew for these shows. But I guess he ran fewer wrestlers, but he paid really well, so that's how he got like people. Because I think Flair came through a lot, but I think Don paid well. And if you look, they lasted longer as a territory. They lasted into the 90s, but I think he owns the building they were running most of those like shows from.
That goes a long way.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Shad?
In the course of watching this, I found that I enjoyed this area much more than a lot of the other old style places. So, like, between Brad, what year were the Tupelo concession brawls in? I'm having brain blank.
79 was the first one, and then the second one I think was in 81.
So Portland reminds me of Memphis a lot in the atmosphere. It's wild, it's loud, people are invested. The difference is that these guys are in like 3/4 concession stand brawl mode a lot of the time.
I would say,
which is cool. It's also different than what I'm used to out of that era.
I would say to your idea too. To me, it's Memphis. It's a. I don't mean watered down in a bad way. It's a tamer Memphis, but with more money, so they have better wrestlers. Like the typical wrestler in Portland appears to be like of a higher caliber doing like a lighter version of Memphis.
But they keep I don't want to use the word speed, but they keep the tempo higher in general than what it seems like Memphis does.
Yeah.
So
I would say I would say, to go with your point, because I'm kind of trying to it's kind of like the style that we saw in Mid-South mixed with like the craze of Memphis.
yeah, I can go with that.
Because Mid-South's very go 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 go. It's like the same kind of thing of they'll work holds and stuff, but they're not going to sit there for 5 minutes working the leg. They're going to go.
It's if they're working a hold, that hold is not staying in one place to be worked.
Yeah.
Like Piper Briscoe. In my head, it's labeled the headlock match. Like that seemed to me to be a very Portland style match. I mean, it's Piper doing it, so of course it does. But they don't stay put. It is a very dynamic territory, and it's very dynamic without overdoing a lot of other aspects.
I would say
I think that's where I can go with.
It's got a very strong like identity and personality attached to it. Because that is something I agree with you. Like, for me, it was like, and like I had to really think about it, but I'm like, this really has like that was what really struck me and made me want to watch more. Was like, there's really like this really has a feel to it that like nothing else has ever given me.
It's got a vibe.
Yeah.
So
definitely, like the crowd definitely helps with that too.
Yeah.
I think we are going to do more Portland in the near future. We haven't decided on next week, but I have asked a couple people to recommend me some Portland stuff. I might go through like the DVD VR Best of Portland set and see like the kind of stuff they put on there. Maybe pick out like another name to focus on. I will probably. I'm not gonna like totally avoid him, but like he's noted. Murder suspect Billy Jack Haynes is like a big part of this area, so I'm not gonna avoid him or anything. But like he might have gotten a spotlight episode had he not, done certain things this year that.
Yeah.
He has mental illness, I think, or something wrong with him.
Oh yeah. No, yeah.
You think?
Yeah, it does.
Well, remember.
Well, I mean, it's obvious, but I mean, also, it's like this has been going on for like a long time.
Well, remember like during COVID. Remember he disappeared for like almost a year, and people thought he was dead.
Yeah.
And he had said some crazy stuff before that, and I think I read that
he gave a shoot. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say in this era, like when he was working in Portland, I think people said he was like running drugs and stuff, and this was like his like legitimate taxable income job.
Yeah, I could see it.
I listened to a shoot he did, and it was just like, it was one of those. It's like he say some boring stuff where it's like just talking about the business, and all of a sudden it just be like some crazy thing he say, and all of a sudden you're lulled to be like, wait, what did he say? Like you got to replay, like, wait, let me go back 30 seconds. He said what? So died because what? Like
he'd go full Alex Jones on you, like they're turning the frogs gay.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite Alex Jonesism is the frog line.
I'm the freaking frog's gay. Just so fucking detached.
He's I mean,
he's done.
I know. I have such a soft spot.
Hang on. Let me do it this way. Let's go ahead and put a fork in him because he's done.
I have such a soft spot for him though because he's such a showman. Like he like knows the gimmick, brother.
I could respect that if he hadn't been such an absolute asshole about it.
Yeah.
You know, especially who he went after. It's like, dude.
No, that was dumb. I don't know why he did that because he is entertaining. Like that's like a annoying factor. Is like I think
If he had, you know, this is going to be a weird way to put it, but if the guy had done like a Colbert parody of like news kind of thing, I think that could have carried him a long way.
I think I think I mean he can't admit he's wrong. That's part of the problem. But I think the problem that came about from that is he was, from my understanding, is he was boozing real heavy at the time because he was having like mental health issues and he was self-medicating. So I mean that's not a justification for it. I think that's kind of why he fucked that up so bad.
Well,
And I think that it's
he
kind of like,
absolutely did do that.
and I think it's like the Cornette thing where he worked himself into a shoot.
Oh, he worked himself into a shoot, brother.
Oh yeah,
There's no question about that.
yeah. So I think so. There's a couple things coming down the pipeline that are kind of on our radar. So there's a request for a 93 episode of Superstars that I want to pair with something that we'll do. There's a part 2 of Randy Savage in Memphis I want to do because there's an Austin Idol match. There's the tag with Lawler against King Kong Bundy and Rick Rude, and then there's like the Loser Leaves Town match. And just because like the first show was so awesome and Shad missed it, which he was sad about. More Portland, obviously. There's all sorts of characters there. There's like the grappler. We could do the Beetlejuice stuff, which is so stupid.
It's Art Bar, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of other stuff. I think there might be a Buddy Rose versus Ric Flair match I want to look at. The AWA episode, I need to figure out who to get on for that would want to talk about it. Barely Legal 97's on my radar of something I'd like to do from ECW because that does have like the M Pro match and stuff, and I would like to do something with like the main cast, like probably like at least reviewing something from ECW that was good.
You guys did a Heatwave 97, and that was the only ECW pay-per-view I owned a copy of. So I was like, like, yeah. I enjoyed listening to it, but then on the other hand, I was like, oh.
I have a big list of things I'd like to do, and it never ends. And I would like to do like Rob Van Dam versus Jerry Lynn. Like I'd like to do a series of matches at some point. Like I don't think we'll necessarily be nice to it because I don't think it'll age well, but I wouldn't mind like doing that. I wouldn't mind doing the Taz versus Bam Bam Bigelow match where like Bam Bam and him go through the ring because that one's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because ECW had so much work rate stuff, but then also they had a lot of matches that just kind of sucked.
I mean, when you have like the Rottens and like I mean, it's an unfortunate reality too that they were on a shoestring budget, and sometimes you just got to put garbage in there because you just need bodies.
Yeah, because that's what you got.
Yeah, and I don't. It's not. I think the problem too is like it's too 90s, and I think
yeah.
It
is very much of its time.
Yeah, my big problem, and I mean Memphis has that problem too, but like the unprotected headshots, I think is a big problem I have. The way it treats women is like an adult. I don't like. I mean Memphis is guilty of that too.
Yeah,
but
there's some of that stuff that's going to pull me right out of it, and that's just how it is.
And that 90s extreme stuff just is a little cringe to me as an adult, personally.
Yeah, and they lean so hard into it that it gets old real quick too. So.
Yeah, when we did the cartoon lineups, the Saturday morning cartoon lineups, like it started getting real cringy when those like 90s extreme like shows started like creeping in.
The very much the hello there fellow kids kind of stuff.
Yeah, like The one with
How
the,
do you do? How do you do, fellow kids?
yeah,
Yeah.
like the yogi one where they're kids. Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. No question.
That's in retrospect, like that's very Hollywood, where it's like one show of a certain nature, like is successful for whatever reason, and then Hollywood is just like, oh, let's make like 20 of those shows. It's like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah,
Oh, Scooby Doo Kids,
that one
like
wasn't
like
bad.
a pup named Scooby Doo. Like I know
Yeah.
it wasn't. I enjoyed that show. We talked about it, but it's like, oh, that was successful. Oh, let's do like 5. Let's do Flintstones Kids. Let's do like
Yeah.
Yogi
Everybody's
Bear
gonna have a
Kids.
kids
Like,
show.
Yeah.
no, please don't.
I was gonna make a joke that we were gonna do election coverage, but there's not enough alcohol to make me make that interesting.
I'm
I
gonna kill myself. Like,
It's like
if
like
anything that would be worse.
We are not doing that, okay? I'm not putting
my
up
God,
with
it's an
election
actual,
coverage
like,
stuff.
knife.
it's like well, look. What if I
It's my hunting knife.
what if I PayPal you both $50 so you can go to the liquor store beforehand?
You know how low my tolerance is. I won't be worth a
Well,
damn.
I mean,
And all that'll happen is me yelling about how it's pointless and you know, sweet meteor of death and all that sort of stuff is what's gonna happen. Let's not do that, please.
how do people? Not that I care, but how do people like do shows and talk about that stuff all the time? And like, it's just it's so boring.
I am 100%.
Don't blame me. I voted for Kodos.
I'm 100% convinced that so much of the issue we have today is just they've got these shows and they've got time to fill. So they just yammer on these inane points over and over and over again. So in the desperate need to fill time, they go through the dumbest shit imaginable because that's what, you know, they're just filling time. It's like, wow.
I think what kills me is when people do that and they're like, well, why don't you care about this and this? Is like because I have a job. I don't like.
Yeah.
It's like I don't have the capacity to care about what some guy said like 80 years ago that was like slightly racist, but not that racist for what you saw at the time. Like, sorry, like my outrage meters like can't handle that.
Yeah.
It's just
I
like
just can't do it.
yeah, it's just like I don't have enough time. Like if I can focus on something that's gonna upset me, or because
I could do something I enjoy.
yeah, because someone was talking about something. It's like, look, I care more about my fake wrestling promotion that I put on YouTube and play with cards. Like that literally I care more about. Like, it's sorry.
Look, hey, let me reach. Hey, guess what? I have more fun talking about the politics in the far future of stompy robots than I do right now. So I think we might be about tapped out, guys.
Yeah, some weeks I'm fine, and then some weeks like we get to a certain point, and like I mean, I think you've heard me do that before, like where you just energy just goes, and you're just dead.
I'm not operating at my best today.
I actually don't know how our friend Tim like does his streams and stuff, because some weeks we do this and my voice is just shot. Especially like when we used to double record, like there are just weeks where my voice is just dead by the end.
Well, my so, you know, my day job, I end up talking a lot. I do a lot of public speaking, and so I'm kind of conditioned for it. But even still, there are times when I just ain't got the fuel anymore. So
I think for me, what the problem is, I don't. And Matt and Shad will tell you this. I don't. If you talk to me like in Discord before this and stuff, and you hear me on the air, I don't talk the same in real life. Like I'm much more low key and stuff. Like this is my on the air show voice. Like I'm much quieter, much slower talking in real life. And I mean, I think Matt's kind of the same way too. Matt talks a little different, and Shad's usually about the same.
Well, Shad has met me in real life now, and I feel I'm like, I'm what I describe myself as an extroverted introvert, because I've actually done like the whole Myers-Briggs personality test, and I actually am like an introvert, but I'm like 51% introvert versus
Yeah.
49% extrovert. So I'm like an extroverted introvert. But because I'm like introverted a little, I'm more introverted than extroverted, but it's close.
Hmm.
I still like get nervous sometimes when meeting people, whatever. So I feel like I wind up being like almost manic when you meet me, and I just like nonstop talk, whatever. So I'm actually more animated in person, possibly, than I come off on the show. But
It's actually
I am fairly laid back.
it's actually funny. Well, Shad's met me too, but I'm an introvert too. But what's funny is I've done this show so long. If I have to do a presentation at work, like I give no shits because I'm just like I talk on like into a microphone, like 2 to 3 hours a week at minimum. Like I do not give a crap. Like I talk for something that people listen to or watch. Like I don't care.
Yeah.
Like,
I after you have pissed off an entire building of people and they want you dead, I really could not care less what
yeah.
if someone who's listening to me talk is like, man, you're boring. It's like, dude, I had someone threaten to stab me once. Come back to me, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's.
Well, and I honestly like for this show, I don't care either if someone wants to criticize it. Like I'm just doing this because I have fun doing it. I like to hang out with my buds. This is like part of my creative outlet. Like if I was doing this to make money, like I know exactly what I would have to the engagement farm to do this, and I'm not going to do that. Like I would rather just do this for fun. I don't want necessarily like that's why we don't really talk a lot about like WWE. Like when we started the show, we were reviewing a lot of modern stuff, and like,
yeah,
I just don't like. And I mean, we do crap on WWE a lot, but like, I honestly, when we pick shows, like if you look at the shows we've reviewed or the matches we reviewed, we like most of them because I cherry pick good stuff. Like I don't want to. I mean, other than Heroes of Wrestling, which was a gag, but I don't want to talk about shit that I'm gonna crap on. Like I want to talk about stuff I like.
If we're gonna talk about stuff we hate, it needs to be entertainingly hateable. So,
which was not Heroes of Wrestling.
no. I think Brad getting me wound up to start yelling about Blackjack Brawl was probably his favorite, pissing me off.
Yeah, but that one was funny though. Blackjack Brawl was entertainingly bad. Heroes of Wrestling was not.
So
Heroes of Wrestling was just depressing. We do need to do. Oh, we'll add that one. UWF Beach, whatever it was called. The other UWF pay-per-view I want to do. Okay.
All right. Well,
that is it.
Wrap us.
Yep, that is it for this week. Thank you all for joining us as always. Thank you to Mr. Beefy that popped in, Pops Reviews who popped in, and Jason, PDSI, and Frank. Oh, I can't see his name. Frank, who talks to us every week.
Wayne Scott.
Okay, yep. Thank you guys for popping in and saying hey. This has been Matt, Shad, and Brad, and Craig Bot, who never contributes, but so thank you for watching as always, and we will catch you next week.